Alright, let's get the world here set up real quick, and then we'll start Magnificence and Magic. I'm gonna be very hands-off this time. Alright, here we are. Make sure I get the right time setting, and then I'll hide the stuff for you guys. I'm not gonna be watching it very much. But, let's see here. Alright. Okay, so, let me see. Actually, just the settings, sorry. Just real quick. Let's keep the music going. Alright. I have been a fan of Transformers, the franchise, for as long as I can remember. I was first introduced, well, my dad watched the G1 cartoon as it was airing, and that passed down to me. I was introduced to Transformers through Transformers Animated, Transformers the Animated Series from 2008 or 9, and when I was 4 years old. And I was very happy to watch, very excited. Looking back, it's not my favorite show, but that's how I got into it, so I have to appreciate the show. But the franchise, I still have much love for the franchise 15 years later, and naturally, I went with friends to Transformers 1, as I plan to go to every Transformers movie since I enjoyed Rise of the Beasts, and wasn't the best movie, but I enjoyed it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Transformers 1, the new movie that just released. What do I think of it? Did I like it? Did I not? Do I have problems with it? And that's what you clicked on the video for. So why am I still talking about it? Transformers 1 is a good movie, and not just a good movie, it is the best Transformers movie to ever have been made. And I don't say that lightly. I do like some of the Transformers movies, not all of them. I've seen all of them. I've played plenty of the games, which we might do later. I've read a few of the comics. You know, I watched most of the show, or a lot of the shows. I've engaged a lot with the franchise, and this is the best movie. Probably my second favorite thing from the franchise overall, which is kind of crazy, but it may be my first. Maybe not. So, that being said, why exactly do I like it? Well, as the title implies, we're going to do this two different parts. I'm going to do a spoiler-free review, and then I'm going to do an in-depth spoiler review, starting with the spoiler-free one, obviously. So that's going to be shorter, and it's also going to go over, you know, you can jump out. If you haven't seen it yet, you can jump out at that time. So it's going to be one video, not two different ones. So, spoiler-free, what are my thoughts? I thought the relationship between, well, I'm going to call him Megatron, D16 is a sort of new development, I think, on naming the character, so I'm going to call him Megatron. That's not a spoiler, you know who he is. And Optimus Prime, I'm used to referring to him as Optimus Prime. I know Orion Pax, but, you know. So, I think the relationship between those two characters was very strong. Perhaps one of the strongest relationships we've ever seen. Not in the franchise, but regarding those two. The chemistry is really there. The actors really sell it. It just works. It just works. And you feel it at the end, especially if you're a fan of the franchise. You feel, because, you know, the divide, you feel it. It hits. It works. So that's what I'll say about that. And then I thought, generally, the casting, I was uncertain about the casting. When I first saw the first trailer, I wasn't very pleased with it. but and I criticized the casting. I thought, why not get voice actors instead of real actors? And I still think generally that should be the case. You get voice actors for voice acting gigs. However, in this specific case, it really worked to have regular actors. I think they really did pull it off for the most part. They it for somebody who somehow wasn't familiar with the names, it wouldn't be obvious that they weren't voice actors. Like, because I know they're not, I can tell. But if you didn't know, if you showed somebody who had no idea who any of them were, any of the cast was, they probably wouldn't be able to tell. Which is impressive. I did not think they would do that well. Pretty much all the cast did amazingly, but especially the 4 main bots. Bumblebee was a little more annoying than I like, but he and pretty much all the jokes landed and were funny or cringy when they meant to be. Certain things that meant to be cringy were, and that sort of thing, but it wasn't overly so. And it wasn't offensive. None of it was offensively bad or offensive in general. It didn't have anything like that. The cast just works really well together. Obviously, some of them have worked together previously with Scarlett Johansson and Chris Hemsworth, but the chemistry is there not just between Megatron and Optimus, but between pretty much all the cast members, even the villains. You just feel it. It just makes sense. There's a lot of Easter eggs in there for big Transformers fans. There's a lot of sort of new ideas that they decided to play with, which I was really a fan of, actually, of how Cybertron looks, how they interact with their environment, where the actual story goes. We've seen some elements of it before in past works, but the direction they took it is refreshing, I will say. Very surprising. I expected to enjoy it because it was a comedy and because it was Transformers, and I like both. But I enjoyed it not just because it's Transformers, but because it's what Transformers is, if that makes sense. The movie really understood the assignment and decided not just to be a Transformers movie, but it's trying to be the Transformers movie, and I think it succeeds at that. I'm sure others will disagree, but as I said before, it is, in my opinion, the best Transformers movie we've ever had. That includes every Transformers movie, animated or live action, that we've ever had. I think it's the best. So, what else can I say about it? The animation. Beautiful. Beautiful. I already forgot who did the animation, but they need to be hired for everything 3D animated. Yeah, there were parts where you can't tell that it's not reality, but it's all computer generated. It's all done with CGI and, 3D animation. That's all it is. It's mind-blowingly good. And on the big screen, I could not see pixels, like details like that. Details that pointed out that it wasn't real. Other than, obviously, it's not people in suits. That's about it. We've come so far in the last 20 years. So far, in the past, when was, 30 years since 3D animations come about, 20 years since it got into major movies like Matrix. We've come so far, and it's spectacular that we can have entire movies create 3D rendered on computers. It's just insane. And it really, really works for the tone, for the story, for everything. If they tried to do it live action, it wouldn't have looked as good, I feel like. Rise of the Beasts did not look as good as this, and that came out last year. So, very solid story, solid storytelling, This is going to be a good introduction to the core concepts of the divide between Optimus and Megatron. For new viewers, this is a perfect starting place for people who have never seen Transformers before. It's the perfect re-entry place for people who love Transformers and are now coming back to the franchise. And it's good for long-time fans because there's a lot for them too. And like I said, it does new things with old concepts. So you can kind of predict where the plot's going to go, and there are tropes and things, but there's a lot that you don't see coming, and I really like that about it. It's almost a remix of all the best qualities of Transformers and the best series from it. That's plural. So it had the best animation out of any Transformers product, I'd say. We're talking, this is like rivaling Prime with the not just storytelling, but the animation and everything. Like, it looks better. Obviously, it's newer. It's 14 years newer, but still, like, it's that good. And I love Prime. So it's shocking. I did not expect to like it nearly as much as I did, but it is an amazing movie, and I decided while watching it that I'm going to buy it on Blu-ray. That's how much I like it. And for context, I have probably a dozen movies on Blu-ray out of all the movies I've seen, and I'm a big movie watcher. So that's saying something. I'm trying to see if I can give you anything else. If you're thinking about watching it because it looks interesting, but you don't know, go watch it. It's worth it. If you're like, if you have any doubts, don't, basically. Because you'll want to see it. You'll regret not seeing it. And on the big screen, I mean. You can always see it on DVD or something, but it's not going to hit the same. I watched 2D, not 3D, but the characters were well developed. There are certainly certain incarnations of them, and if this became the definitive Transformer voices and models and everything, I don't know how I would feel about that. But I could watch an entire show or movie series, not just trilogy, with these designs and be perfectly happy. That would be fine by me. They're not my favorite designs, but they not only work for the movie, they are valid interpretations of the characters. I'm definitely getting the toys. I collect Transformers, if you don't know. I'm definitely getting the toys of at least Optimus and Elita 1. Probably Bumblebee and the others too. I have an extensive Bumblebee collection. But yeah, I guess I've got to give it a rating. I guess I've said all I can that's not spoilery. Give me a second here. I think that's it. I think that's all I can say. That doesn't spoil it. So, all right. Well, if you're heading out now, if you're like, well, I listen and maybe I should watch it, maybe not. Go watch it. If it sounds interesting, go watch it. If you're completely uninterested, don't watch it. It's not for you. If it just doesn't sound interesting. But if you're doubting, don't go watch it. It's worth it. I promise. And thank you guys. And then let's get on now. So, last chance to get out. We're going to do spoilers now. So, if you don't want to hear that. Okay, cool. So, spoilers. I think the Sentinel Prime thing was a good choice. I was like, oh no, they're defaming the Primes, defaming the Primes, and like, I don't know how that's going to be. They weren't. it was just Sentinel Prime who wasn't even a Prime, which is an interesting take. And I know they did that with, what's his name? The guy who, in Revenge of the Fallen, betrayed the Autobots. That was... I didn't think it worked very well in that movie, but it was an interesting concept. And, of course, in Transformers Animated, they did something similar to this with, you guessed it, Sentinel Prime. So, I think it's interesting to use that version of the character. I think it really worked. I don't know if you saw it, but D&D Honor Among Thieves had a, I thought, strikingly similar character there. It hit much less hard in that movie, but that was still a good movie. I went to see it in the theater. And this one had a lot more weight behind it, behind the impact of Sentinel Prime being the bad guy. He was not exactly mustache twirling, but just purely evil, and you could feel that. It really worked. I don't know who the actor was who played him, but he did an excellent job. As did, as I said, all the actors. Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime is an interesting choice. The voice was not as bad as I expected. I mean, it was hard to see Optimus in that voice, and not just Chris Hemsworth, but then again, we've had worse voices for him. I'm looking at you, voice actor for Transformers Animated. I mean, I know why they got that guy, because it's a younger Optimus Prime who's not immature and stuff, but I just don't like that interpretation of Transformers, really. Optimus specifically. So yeah, this was a very interesting movie. I don't know. Bumblebee was a little bit too hyper. I feel like some of his more grating qualities should have been resigned to Blur, which I realized they wouldn't have gotten to Blur. Like, he was a cameo in the movie, but they wouldn't have gotten to that in this movie. He couldn't be one of the main characters. Of course, you have to have Bumblebee as one of the main characters. I understand it. I like Bumblebee. Like I said, I have a more extensive collection of Bumblebee than any other Transformer. I don't have a problem with the character. But what I do not like is that he filled the comic relief role, but and it worked, like I said, but it wasn't exactly. I could have done without the hyperness. That's the main thing. He was meant to be annoying, but not. I think it detracted a few points from the movie, really, to have him be that way. Very minor points, but still. The slow descent. I can't help but compare this movie, because of its story, to War for Cybertron Trilogy, the Netflix series, plural. That's my favorite Transformers of all time, by the way, if you were wondering. This is now my second favorite. That's my favorite just because of the political aspects of it, and just everything hits so hard. It's an absolute tragedy. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Amazing story. You should watch that too. But that was certainly harder to understand than this one, and it also takes a lot longer to watch. So I understand the choices that were made with this movie, and obviously it's a movie. It's a big, in the theater movie, so they can't just extend all the character relationships out so much. But I think giving it that extra time really makes you feel it when in Megatron's slow descent. I was going to say into madness. He doesn't exactly go mad. In Prime, he kind of does, but and so it worked. The slow descent into madness worked, but not madness. But it could have been stronger. I don't even really want to say that. It's not that it could have been stronger. It could have, if it had more time, it would have been better, I guess, is what I'm saying. Huh. Which is, it's weird. It's not weird. Megatron is sort of a weird character. And his voice actor, while he did an excellent job, I wasn't sure he could pull it off. Just like I wasn't sure Chris Hemsworth could. But he really did a convincing job of it. I think getting someone with his, I don't know, tone, I guess, but like quality of voice, it's very striking compared to, my mind always goes back to G1 and Transformers Prime. Those types of voices where they're much more like Starscreams but lower, they're very grating, they're very unpleasant to listen to and very yelly. This is very different. He did yell and he can yell, but it's just different, and I think it lends more credence to the character. Makes him a stronger character because of that voice. It's a similar thing with like David Prowse's voice for Darth Vader versus James Earl Jones' voice for Darth Vader. There's that level of gravitas where you take them more seriously than Prime or G1. Don't get me wrong, Megatron in Prime is great, but I don't take him nearly as seriously as this guy. I feel Megatron's rage in this movie. I never was able to relate to Megatron in Transformers Prime. I relate to him in this movie. It really makes you feel both sides, both the loss of the friend, on both sides really, but Megatron's choice to do that and embrace his destiny of starting the Decepticons and leading them. I think it was a nice touch for the majority of the Decepticons to be the Royal High Guard. I think that's a good idea that existed before the time of Sentinel Prime. I think that was a good idea because that explains why almost all of the Decepticons can fly, because that's never, as far as I know, been explained in other canons, is why can they all fly. And, not that it really needed that much explaining, but now it's been explained. It's because they were all part of the same group. And so I thought that was an interesting choice. I don't know how I feel about Starscream being part of the Royal High Guard, but it was an interesting way to treat it, and I respect that decision. What else? The Primes were done excellently. All their scenes, everything like that, was just perfect, really. Yeah. Lawrence Fishburne did an amazing job, naturally, as he pretty much always does. I can't think of anything where he wasn't amazing. I'm just thinking back to the movie. It went by really fast compared to most of the movies that I watch, really. I watch most of my movies streaming or whatever, so I can always pause it and come back later. You can't with movies in the theater, of course. But usually there's slow parts that I'm like, okay, come on, guys, or I'll get up and go to the bathroom and miss, 2 minutes of it, something like that. I didn't for this movie. I never got up a single time, and my eyes were glued to the screen the whole time. It felt like no time was passing at all. And I could feel the time passing only because I could sense, like, where the plot was at, where the story was at in terms of acts and all. And that's just because I've been trained in that. So that's very good. That's what you want your movie to do. You don't want people to be bored during your movie. And I was not. My eyes, as I said, were glued to the screen. It was excellently done. I didn't want to miss anything. Not just the Easter eggs, because I'm sure I missed some, but just the action, or the lack of action. It wasn't all action all the time, like some of the shows can be. There were some slower moments, and they didn't feel too slow. But the whole movie didn't feel rushed. It really had that pacing down, which is just awesome. I'm surprised that Michael Bay produced it, because there weren't nearly as many explosions as in his films. And it was also a good movie, which you don't get with Michael Bay films. So that was interesting too. But Steven Spielberg, as an executive producer, probably helped it. But then again, do executive producers actually do that much? I don't know. But it did feel more like a Spielberg movie than a Bay movie, which was interesting. That both of them were on the project. I can't imagine how those two personalities get along. But yeah, pretty much, I'm sure, I'm gonna think of critiques. RC, I don't think was in it enough. They slotted her in there a few times because she's pretty recognizable. She's the, most recognizable female Transformer. And maybe for representation, but maybe not, because the current comics, I don't think it's been established that she's transgender. So, probably not for that case, but she is the most recognizable female Transformer. I think the choice of Alita 1 instead of RC was a bold move, but I think it really paid off. The dynamic that Optimus and Alita 1 have together really worked, and it worked for the end of the movie when it was set up that she would become the commander of the army, basically, and be Optimus's right-hand man for getting the new government set up. That was awesome. What else? Oh yeah, I can, if they go this direction, which I know they did in War for Cybertron trilogy, which is why I say this. If they go with the romance subplot, I will buy it. I think it works. I think it could work. They didn't lean into that in this at all, but you can see it if you know that it's been a thing in the past. And I think that was a smart decision not to lean into that for this movie, but to leave it open-ended, in case they decide to go for that in the future, which I would not be displeased if they did. I think these characters have that chemistry and can work together. Yeah, it's the strongest and best Transformers movie that's ever been made. Probably one of the best interpretations of it. Probably one of the best jumping on points for new fans of the series. I mean, it's got it all, really. Everything you want. Something that was interesting. It is rated PG, and so a lot of people will see it as a kids movie, but it's not really. I mean, kids can watch it, but I will say they cussed in it. They said hell 3 times. No, they said Alita 1 says hell twice. Bumblebee says badass, specifically badassatron, 3 different times, and I believe I heard damn once, but I don't remember. And I know damn isn't exactly new to the franchise, but I think those other words might be. I don't know. So, that was interesting, especially for a PG movie. I'm kind of surprised they didn't get a PG-13 rating for cussing that much, but I guess it wasn't enough for the censors to be like, PG-13. Because they never made a point of it to cuss. It's just the best way that they feel. For instance, with the Badassatron, that's what B-127 wanted to be called. You know, Bumblebee. That's what he wanted to be called, and so like it was more of a joke than anything, and it was used as one, which worked. It was funny, but it. I guess he just didn't say it enough, or it was the context or something. I don't know. Anyway, but it's PG. It's good for really all ages, except if you're big on the cussing thing. No cussing, then you may not want to see it. Or have your kids see it, rather. But very good movie. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I am hyped for a sequel. I know that's early on, but the best movies should leave you wanting more. And I'm not saying this is one of the best movies of all time. I think it's got some big contenders to go with there. I'm not saying that. I will say it's one of the best things that the franchise has ever put out. And I also it's amazing for its 40th anniversary. And I will say it's one of my favorite Transformers projects ever. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the best movies always leave you wanting more, and this one absolutely did for me. I absolutely wanted more when I left the theater. I'm ready for a sequel already, and I know I will be watching this movie multiple times. As I said, I'm going to get it on Blu-ray when that comes out. So, yeah, excellent movie. Oh, I do have to give it a rating. I didn't for the spoiler-free part. I said it was the best Transformers movie. I didn't give it a rating. Okay, I'm trying to be fair, but not let my first day, rating give it too much, and I don't want to get slammed for it either. It wasn't a 10 out of 10. I'm sure there's things that weren't perfect about it. I can't really think of any right now that's just like glaring problems or things that I hated about it. But it wasn't the perfect movie. It was the perfect blockbuster, I think. Summer blockbuster. I realize we're in fall now, but, it was pretty much just an excellent movie. So, and I can't think of any major flaws with it, really. So, I'm going to give it a tentative 9 out of 10, which is extremely high for me. I mean, there are plenty of 9 out of 10s, but that's mostly because of how many movies I've watched rather than how good movies are. 9 out of 10s, we're talking Iron Man, what are some other ones? I mean, Iron Man's one of the biggest ones. Fault in Our Stars. Trying to think of other ones. I can never conjure up movies on the spot, but there are very few 10 out of 10s for me. 10 out of 10, we're talking The Batman and Blade Runner, that sort of thing. Batman 1989 is probably a 9 out of 10 for me. That's the level we're talking at here. We're talking about. For reference, the previous Transformers movie, I'd say, is a 7 out of 10. Pretty solid 7, but a 7 nonetheless. And I did debate that back and forth. I was thinking it could have been a 6. It really wasn't that strong, but it really was that enjoyable, which is why I went with a 7. So, yeah, it did everything right. It checked all my boxes, for certain. I expected just a fun experience, and I got more than I paid for, literally. Because I literally paid for it. And it was just a great experience. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining in. with me. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I realized it was a bit rambly, but I needed to get my thoughts out, and I realized if I, edited and uploaded later and stuff, I'd never get to it, and you guys wouldn't be able to hear my opinion either before or right after you watched it. So I decided just to live stream it, and that way you can get to it as soon as you want. So anyway, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you want to hear me talk about other Transformers things, other movies, anything like that, let me know. And I do have a few Transformers games, if you want me to play any of those. I know I have, I believe it's Battlegrounds from Cyberverse, from that universe, if you want me to play that. I have that right in front of me. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. As of the time of this live stream, the next one that's probably coming up is revisiting my Batman collection, so be looking for that. But anyway, thank you again, and bye-bye.